I want everybody to say, talk to me then, what? 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 Lady, talk to me then, what? Talk to me then, what?
Welcome back to Ntenjwa Talks, 30th episode of this talk show. I'll welcome you back if it's the first time coming across my content, where I share my opinions on basically whatever is happening in the world. I welcome you, and I hope you are entertained, or you learn something new, or you're just here for the vibes. I welcome you and welcome back to those who have once viewed or a regular viewer of my content. This episode is one that's long overdue. Long overdue for the viewers, long overdue for this channel, and long overdue for the topic. The reason I'm saying it's long overdue for these three things is because different things have been happening that kind of delayed this episode from being released. So, starting with the topic, it's long overdue because a lot of people have had their opinions and both sides have been out and people have made their opinions, and it's coming across as, at this point, it's like, okay, someone else is still talking about it. The thing is, back when social media was still new, once something happens, it would be a topic of discussion for like at least 3 months, at least. So now, once something happens on that day, unless if it's a big thing, 1 month at most is enough. Like, sometimes once something happens on the day, it's over. Now let's move on to the next thing. Week, 2 weeks, up to a month at most. So it's kind of funny how, a lot of things are happening. I mean, I get it, there's like 8 billion people in the world, if not just slightly under. So now we're getting access to, find out what's happening in the US, find out what's happening in Europe, find out what's happening in Australia, New Zealand, find out what's happening in Asia, so on and so forth. Right? Middle East, all of that. Now we're finding out so if something happens today in Africa, tomorrow you'll be finding out about something that's happening in America, South and North. And then the following day we're finding out what's happening in the Middle East and then in Asia, so on and so forth. So some people, I'm sure by now, have come across what I'm about to talk about. But if you think about it, it's still kind of recent. It's just that a lot of things are happening. So it's like, oh yeah, if we've seen this, okay, next topic or next event. So that's for this topic. Now, for this channel, I think I forgot the third thing. For this channel, the last episode I dropped, sorry about that. I forgot that I was playing something on the device that I'm recording on. So I kind of forgot the third thing I was about to talk about. But the second thing is this channel. This channel, the last time I dropped an episode was on New Year. I think it was just a day or just a few days, a couple of days after New Year's. And I did state that I'm trying to plan something for this channel, but also for this talk show. Because originally, it was supposed to be one thing, but now it's kind of focusing on something else, right? And after this episode has been released, you should be expecting a few updates. So for this channel and for this talk show, it's been long overdue, this episode. And third thing, I can't really remember, but another reason why this is long overdue is because, man, a lot has been happening personally. Currently, my body's in pains, and it's just, yes, I work out, so sometimes it's just my muscles, Sometimes I think like I overwork myself, I overtrain myself. And I'm not gonna lie, I've been kind of put training on hold for certain things that I've been doing. I'll talk about it at a later stage or when it's appropriate for me to talk about them. But a lot has been happening and I had to stop training. So now I'm back at training, because like I said, I'm planning a lot of things, and, seeing people do something and then you actually doing it, it's very different, eh? The best way to find out is if you, fuck around, basically. So those are the reasons. And if I do remember what the third reason actually was, if it wasn't this, then I'll talk about it. So basically, there's this thing where if a person, in most cases a celebrity, but this also applies to the average person. If a person from a first world country is visiting a third world country, they're always treated a different way. So there's two sides to this. One side is because I've seen it for myself. In fact, both sides have actually seen it and probably done it. No, not done it, but I'll go into details. There's two sides to this because you have people who are sycophants, and then you have people who are genuine, welcoming, right? And like I said, there's two sides to it. So the reason I'm going to be talking about this on this episode is because I was going to talk about it earlier until obviously the release of this episode. But as we all know by now, probably around the world, iShowSpeed is in Africa, right? And majority of African countries welcomed him. I think is he visiting all of them? I don't think he's visiting all of them, but all the countries he's visited, majority of them welcomed him. Others made him feel like a king, rightfully so, and others, select few, treated him in a way that, is bad for the country, but most importantly is bad for Africa. Now again, considering the country or countries, I think it's one country if I'm not mistaken. Considering the country, you won't necessarily say they're African. They are in Africa, but they're not African, right? So I'll get to that though. They welcomed him, they gave him a king's welcome, and they treated him like a king. When someone is visiting your house, you want to give them one or more reasons why they should come back to visit you. Obviously, if you're expecting their visit, you are very prepared. But if they're not expecting a visit, when someone visits you and you're a person, you want to be known as a person who knows how to host people and you're a very welcoming person. You want to give them reasons why they should come back to visit you. Even if you don't want them to visit you again, but they should at least have reasons, right, on their side. Because it's easier for you to host people and it's easier for you to continue being a good person in society or in that community because visitors, whether they're from first world countries or from any other country or even in the community, they will say, hey, I've never heard anything come from that house. Now let's apply to the topic at hand. Well, our visitor in this continent. Some people, majority of the countries, though, they were, they gave them, I mean, there are people who are going to want to get clout and, advertise and, basically would come across as a sycophant. And this is the thing that I hate about this mentality is that sometimes you make people, sometimes you make people bigger than what they are. Back when I probably in the generation of our forefathers, there was this thing that when you hear someone speak English for the first time, you're like, wow, this is a different language. And it's supposedly the language that you're supposed to use or speak wherever you are in the world. Now, if you're an old person or you were raised by a person who's experienced this, having a visitor that speaks English, worse if it's a person from a first world country, you're like, these are the people that we hear about that have everything. Of which, since they first world countries, at that time, you'd be like, oh yeah, definitely they have everything. Media played a huge part in that. But it was something that would ensure you, or rather, it would be something that would be understandable and justified when you act or become a sycophant towards the person. Now, media is still playing its role. I mean, it's no longer as effective, but some people still believe in media. But now it's no longer justified when you are a sycophant towards the person or people. Because we've come to find out that all those first world countries are first world countries because of basically what they're doing to third world countries. We're not going to jump into that. That's a matter for another episode. But basically, they're first world countries because of third world countries. Whatever aspect that comes to mind first, it's all true. Right? So when you're treating people like they are gods, it's like, bro, this person or people, they breathe in oxygen and breathe out carbon dioxide. The color of your blood is the same as theirs. They just come from a different part of the world. You don't have to treat them like gods. Just treat them like people, like a person. Treat them like a human being. You don't have to make, you get the idea. And that's relevant because it reminded me when, when they were here in South Africa, there were a certain group of people who were chasing clouds and they were, you know, trying to make sure that, they, as long as they show in his stream visible enough and try to get those few seconds of fame. Why? Why? So it reminded me because I've been in situations where the people of said community or said organization or whatever, I've been in situations where I see people treat people from first world countries like they're gods, like you make them bigger than what they are. So it's something that really, I wouldn't say it pisses me off, but it's worrying because what would happen if you go to the first world country? So you're making everyone they bigger than they are. So it's like, bro, they're just human beings. So, but then on the other hand, if you look at what they were doing, when you are hustling, sometimes you need to do some things that are hopefully going to boost your hustle. So, see, this is the beauty of two sides. Because on one side, it's a sycophant behavior. But on the other side, if you're looking at it from the perspective of a hustler, you are like, what are you expecting a hustler to do? Yes, there are different ways and different angles and different methods of marketing and whatever. But as a hustler, the best way to find out is to fuck around. Now, whether it's positive or negative, you still did it. Now you know. If it boosted your hustle, now you know that, okay, should I continue doing this when another mega star and I get the opportunity to be in the presence? Should I do that again or should I have a different approach? It's part of the hustle. So, depends on what perspective. Depends on the perspective. So, yes, but the thing is, in general, I seriously believe that, treat people as they are. Now, that doesn't mean that if they're criminals, you're going to treat them like criminals. Because some people are obviously falsely accused. Yes, you'll never know, you'll never expect it. Sometimes you don't even expect that person to be a criminal until you hear that he or she is a criminal. So, but just treat people as human beings. It's, I don't want to make this point, but I kind of have to because, I'm on that set side. And I'll tell you what side that is. You see, if you are a person who understands that you have to be a good person, you'd expect them to at least believe in a superpower, in a higher source. In this case, believes in God. Doesn't really matter what religion, doesn't really matter. Believing in God. You expect a person who believes in God to be a good person in general. Yes, of course, the reason I'm emphasizing in general is because there are exceptions, good ones and bad ones. The point is, you expect the person to be godly or believe in God. So there was this thing that used to trend, I don't know how long ago, but if you were to be lost or to be placed in a island or somewhere Would you prefer to be placed in an island or that place where it's not godly or people of that island don't believe in God? Or would you prefer to be placed in an island where people believe in God? May not be the God that you serve, but they believe in God. Of course, you would want to be placed in an island where people believe in a God. Doesn't really matter the religion. Because those people that believe in God of their religion, most religions, it says a commandment to not kill someone. So are you expecting that to be the case when you're in the other island where people don't believe in God? Don't have to get into the specifics. But anyway, so that's the thing. Right. Now that is for the country, South Africa, my country. Right. It was, out of all the good things that, this guy, I Show Speed, experienced in South Africa, one of the countries he wants to visit again, is because in general people welcomed him. Like, yes, they were able to tell, okay, this person's not from here. So, but they didn't have to be like, oh, you American. Oh, hi, American. How are you? No. I was like, hi, okay. Other people, you would think, I'll tell you the mentality just to save you the suspense. Other people are like, oh, this person is probably like, a cheese boy, he likes to speak English. But then if you pay attention to the accent, you're like, no, this is not a cheese boy. This is actually an American. Or he's not a South African, rather. So, but everyone welcomed him. It wasn't put him here. Ask a question. He asked the question. They answered that question. It's all good. Every single thing that the US knows about South Africa is the total opposite. He saw the beauty of South Africa, beauty in the places, and beauty in our people. So that's the thing. But then in general, let me talk about the continent now. He was welcomed as a king, and I've seen clips, right? I'm not really a streamer. I'm not even in the streaming industry. And even though I'm doing this talk show, I'll probably do some live streams here and there, maybe on the streaming platforms, just to give you a heads up, either on the streaming platforms or here on YouTube, right? But I still wouldn't identify myself as a streamer, by the way, because I feel like I'll talk about this at length in a different episode, but I feel like being a streamer, it's like totally different from a person who just live streams. But I'll give you context in a different episode. So in Africa, he was treated as an African. He was welcomed to feel at home, as all African Americans. I don't know why they call themselves that, by the way, but yeah, as all African Americans, obviously wish when they visit the continent of Africa, they want to feel at home. Now, whether they're visiting their ancestors' home or ancestors' country, depending on what their DNA tells them, or they're visiting any country in Africa, they always feel at home though. All African Americans who have visited, let me not say all because there may be one who didn't have a good time in Africa. So majority of African Americans, when they come to Africa, they feel at home. And that's exactly what we saw in real time. So these people feel at home, right? And when I see the clips, I'm like, man, by the way, people think Africa is a small continent. Hey man, Africa is a big continent. Some of the things I didn't even know Africa were able to do. And it's not because it was a competent thing, questioning how competent my continent is, but it is me obviously not knowledgeable in a lot of things, basically. So, but I really enjoyed what I saw in the clips, and the reaction was very positive. I think the only negative interaction or negative encounter he had was in that country. I'm not going to say the name. If you're watching the stream, you know which country. Because it may have been one encounter, or it may have been the fact that in that country, that's how the people are. Right? So, but he felt at home. And he was genuinely disappointed that he's been having a good tour the whole time, felt safe, felt at home, sometimes didn't even feel the need to involve his security, because he felt at home. He wanted to be treated like a human being. He wanted to be treated like an African, which obviously happened. And then when he got to the country, for some reason, water bottles were thrown at him. And that's where I was like, okay, this country's in Africa, but honestly, this is not an African thing. When you look at the people, they're not African themselves. They just happen to be in the country of Africa. So, to conclude this episode, here's what I will say. Some people will obviously treat people who, they would think of, if you think of a certain person as superior to you, obviously you can say the context matters. Because if you're going to tie it to the fact that he's a streamer and other streamers treated him the way that they did, others being sycophants and others being welcoming, you could say that those that were cheating, that were sycophants, you could obviously say that no, they were just trying to obviously get the approval and the appreciation and being noticed and being on the stream of a person who is arguably the best and top streamer in the world. Arguably. I may not know the numbers, I'm not in the industry like I told you. But arguably he's the number one. He's the top streamer, arguably. You would want to boost your hustle. But then other streamers were welcoming. I mean, you saw the other streamers, in particular the streamer that's in Zimbabwe, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not familiar with his name, but he traveled with that guy to Ethiopia and he traveled with the guy to, I'm not sure which other country. But it was, you didn't spot that sycophant behavior. He was welcoming to the point where you would genuinely think they are brothers, treating each other like human beings, just enjoying life. That's what I'm talking about. So that guy, I must say, he represented his country very well. Zimbabwe, I haven't been to Zimbabwe, but I have come across a lot of Zimbabweans, and I've never actually had a negative interaction with Zimbabweans. I actually want to visit Zimbabwe. In fact, I actually want to visit the whole country of Africa, which hopefully I will do. Don't know when, but I certainly will. I've never actually had a negative encounter with the Zimbabweans, and I'm thinking that out of all the African countries I've visited so far, I'm thinking that the next African country I'm visiting will be Zimbabwe. So, but he represented his country very well, and it's a good thing because it's about time first world countries it's about time the US takes Africa seriously. I understand the media. Well, I understand the media played its part in demonizing Africa. I'm only naming the US only because I'm talking about a person who's from the US. So, but it's about time. Like every single time I look at clips and, I happen to probably watch movies or any series and they get an opportunity to shame or demonize Africa, you're like, but that's not even true. I mean, the last time Africa was demonized by the US and globally was when obviously their president had an encounter with our president, right? And, apparently there was a genocide here and that wasn't true. I actually wanted to talk about that in the episode that I think it was episode 6, if I'm not mistaken, where I talked about basically the US versus SA. But then at the time, the sources, I couldn't really confirm the sources if they were talking facts or they weren't. But there was no genocide here. Even the white people were saying there are no genocide. It's just that obviously, when the media is involved, in order to sway the narrative to favor one side, it has to be said, right? I'm not saying there weren't any people unalived. I'm saying it wasn't as bad as it seems. But that's just to paint the narrative, though. I'm not going to talk about it at length because it's a topic for another episode, right? As you know, I am not a person who promotes any form of violence, let alone unaliving people, right? I don't even have to pick a side. I just, because I haven't done it myself, I haven't unalived a person even by mistake. So, but yeah, I really hope you enjoyed this episode. And I mean, my advice to anyone, if you were to ask, so how would you treat people? Just treat them with respect. Don't have to make them bigger than they are. If you're in the person's industry, you don't have to be like a sycophant now. Because at the end of the day, you never know what would happen if you get a negative interaction. Unless if you're a person who thrives in, what's the phrase? Negative engagement, using negative engagement to boost whatever it is that you want to boost, right? So, but in general, I'd be like, just treat a person with respect. Welcome them, treat them with respect, show them, especially South Africa. I mean, South Africa is a country where, and I'm only talking about South Africa and the continent, I'm sure all countries are heavily dominated by a certain religion. But just show that you are a godly person. I'm always hopeful that people who visit this country don't come across people who don't serve a God or who are not godly, who are the opposite of that. Because it only takes one clip and one event and one encounter to go viral. And you wouldn't want a bad representative of a community, country, or continent to go viral. Because a lot of things would be, well, I wouldn't even say exposed, a lot of things would be said about the community, country, continent, whatever, based on one encounter. I just told you now, a few minutes ago, about the country where I Show Speed, was receiving hate. Imagine if that country is, let's just say for the sake of the argument, I was saying, I'm keep being disturbed because someone is constantly calling and it's disturbing this video. Now, what I was saying was, imagine if that country, for the sake of the arguments, let's just say, imagine if the country is known as the most godliest country in Africa. But because of that viral moment that happened in that country, you wouldn't believe that they were the godless country in Africa. But like I said, for the sake of the argument, I'm not saying it's true. So just treat any person with respect, whether you see them as your superior or your inferior. Treat a person with respect because you never know what happens. You'll never know. Here in South Africa, we always preach about the spirit of Ubuntu. And when I Shall Speedy visited this country, has nothing bad to say about the country. I'm sure he saw some things and was like, oh, okay, well, that's not good. But in general, in fact, not even in general, most of the things, he has a lot of good things to say about this country. Like I said, he wants to visit it again. So, but yeah, I'll see you next episode, and I hope you enjoyed this. Just be on the lookout. Be on the lookout. It's not big plans, it's not big things, it's just, it's just an update. So be on the lookout. See you next episode.
I want everybody to say, talk to me then, what? Talk to me then.